Hi there. Before I get started, I just wanted to really quickly say, if you want to support this channel, you can do so at patreon.com/Salari. Any amount that you can offer goes a very long way and it helps produce these videos and pay my rent, life stuff. But anyway, here's the video you came here for. Enjoy. I recently stumbled across an article about the upcoming game Stellar Blade, an action game produced by South Korean developer Shift Up, where the game director Hyung-tae Kim was discussing the design of its protagonist, Eve. The design of Eve isn't necessarily controversial or even new compared to what we've seen in the past. She's a lithe woman with a conventionally attractive face, long gorgeous hair, and by default wears a skin-tight bodysuit, which accentuates parts of her anatomy. As character designs go, it's quite good. Not really iconic, but distinct enough that it stands out. But as the industry has started to gravitate towards female character designs that avoid overtly sexualizing them, it's interesting to see one in this day and age which leans into it quite heavily. For the sake of clarity, sexualized character designs, regardless of gender, aren't inherently a bad thing. What matters is context. Are they sexualized because it says something about their character and how they want to express themselves? Are they dressed this way because it's for the sake of the audience, or perhaps a mixture of both? Intent is important. In this article though, when the director of Stellar Blade was asked about the design of Eve, he made the context clear, saying, "When it comes to the design, we put special attention on the back of the character, because the player is always facing the back of the character when they're playing. That's what they see the most of. So we thought this was pretty important." In the case of Eve, it's fairly clear emphasis is on her backside, which is accentuated by her impossibly vacuum-packed outfit. Eve's movements are fluid and elegant, yet powerful. It's similar to what you'd see in other female-led action games such as Bayonetta or Nier Automata, two other titles which have both been scrutinized and celebrated for their character designs, and both of which have context behind their designs. At the time of publishing this video, Stellar Blade hasn't been released yet, so no one has any knowledge of whether the design of Eve has some form of context which validates it, but based on the interview with the director, right now it seems apparent that she's being created with the intent to titillate, to have something nice to look at while you navigate the world, and given Shift Up's history with game development and character designs such as the mobile game Goddess of Victory Nikke, where its female cast have meticulously crafted butt jiggle physics, it's safe to say that there might be nothing beyond that. Maybe there is, and I'm not privy to the details, but as Freud once said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and in this case, the cigar is jiggling buttocks. It's not necessarily a tragedy. In many ways it's kind of ridiculous, but it made me wonder, is there something more to this? Is there something going on in South Korea's game industry or even their society as a whole? Is it a predominantly male-led industry looking to fulfill their desire to stare at perfectly crafted ideals of the female form for hours on end, or does it speak to how women are seen in the country? Well, as I did some research on the matter, it turned out that it was kind of both, but it ran much deeper than that. That there's a perilous landscape that women in South Korea need to navigate in education, the workplace, and their everyday life. How many of them are treated as though they must be seen and not heard, and when they are heard, their voices are stifled or curated through politicians or senior management that refuses to protect women when they're vulnerable. We're at a point in history where South Korea has more cultural exports than it's ever had before, and they're being celebrated around the world for their films, music, TV shows, and indeed their games. But whilst this is happening, there's a dark undercurrent that's omnipresent throughout South Korea, which seeks to keep women from achieving equality with men by upholding long-standing cultural norms which relegate them to being second-class citizens. Eve may not be the cause of this, but she might be a symptom. Now, to lay some groundwork, I am not saying that the design of Eve or any video game character will result in the destruction of all progress made when it comes to the representation of women in media, and I'm not saying that there's no place for character designs like hers. It's a misconception to assume that individuals advocating for women's rights and better representation automatically reject sexualized characters. While some may hold that perspective, many others remain indifferent or even appreciate such designs. The reality is far from the simplistic black and white dichotomy often portrayed on the internet. Throughout my research into South Korean gaming culture though, I have learned that there is an extremely vocal and considerably large group of almost entirely male consumers who are rabidly opposed to the idea of video games, or any other form of media for that matter, being tampered with in ways that make it so they don't cater to them first and foremost. And this includes having characters that appeal to their ideal of female beauty. Over the past few years, the South Korean game industry has exploded in size and popularity. The country's esports scene was booming long before it became popular elsewhere in the world, and is home to some of the best players in the world, to the point where professional gamers for games like League of Legends are treated like bona fide national celebrities with an income to match. With such rapid growth comes a desire to appeal to consumers in cost-effective ways. What those desires can be varies. It can be as simple as making quality of life changes to gameplay systems or rebalancing certain mechanics, but it can also involve companies trying to placate the anger of their customers for reasons that extend far beyond the game they're playing, going so far as to encroach upon the private lives of the people who make them, to ensure that they have control over what they do and don't want to potentially see in the products they consume. In 2016, the voice actress Jae-young Kim, who worked on the MMO Closers, was fired by Nexon after gamers discovered that she posted a tweet which included a picture of her wearing a t-shirt with the words "Girls do not need a prince" on it. After numerous customers complained about this, claiming that she was a misandrist, Nexon immediately dismissed Jae-young Kim and replaced her voice in the game with another actor. As messaging goes, it's fair to say that it wasn't particularly brazen. It's the kind of thing that you might see on a mannequin in Target during Women's History Month, but nevertheless, to her employer and the male gamers they capitulated to, it was a bridge too far. Unfortunately for Jaeon, the t-shirt did have some baggage attached to it though, which she claims that she wasn't aware of when she purchased it. It was discovered that it was being sold by a South Korean feminist group called Magalia. Magalia was originally established with the intention of combating rampant misogyny found in online spaces by mirroring the tactics that men would use to complain about women and reversing the gender roles, with the overall aim of creating a humorous counterpoint or provoking outrage. As they grew, they became more involved in other causes to protect women online and in public spaces, such as taking down adult video sites where content featuring women was posted without their consent, and they advocated the Break the Corset movement, which was established with the intention of protesting South Korea's long-standing and unreasonably high beauty standards expected of women. More on that later. Magalia eventually gained a reputation for being an organization of men-hating radical feminists whose intention was to undermine and replace men through humiliation and discrimination. Magalia's activism did have some genuinely impactful results, and they frequently helped raise money for single mothers who are often stigmatized in South Korean society, and although at first they were celebrated by many, their tactics to fight misogyny became questionable, and even dangerous, to the point where their membership began to drop and were criticized harshly by some that remained. Magalia would go as far as to encourage women who were pregnant with males to get abortions, and even allegedly outed closeted gay men to their wives. And it's worth saying that not only is when and how a person discloses their sexuality to others a very delicate matter, in South Korea there's still a substantial amount of discrimination towards LGBTQ+ individuals. Regardless of the original intention behind Megalia, actions such as these are not acceptable. It's understandable that anger can fester within oppressed groups and reach a point where their sentiments may result in them being further ostracized, but the actions of Megalia ultimately became their undoing. Its more radical members began to do things such as posting real-life gory photographs of men and sharing their desire to commit illegal and explicit acts, which I can't repeat here due to YouTube's policy, but I don't think you'd want to hear it anyway. At the point in time in which Jaeyoung Kim posted the picture of her wearing Megalia's Girls Do Not Need a Prince t-shirt, the organization had already marred its reputation with its actions. Jaeyoung stated that she wasn't a member of Megalia's community and wasn't aware of the kind of things that they had done. She believed that they were a regular organization whose intent was to help women achieve equal rights, and she bought the t-shirt without any intention of instigating misandry. Ultimately though, Jaeyoung lost her job because people didn't like the idea of her having an association with a group that Korean men had a substantial amount of animosity towards. They didn't like thinking about a woman working in an industry they revere and the slim possibility of her influencing any changes that don't cater to men. This situation may seem outrageous, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. For example, there was another incident in which a female concept artist who worked for IMC Games retweeted a post with the term hanam in it, which is Korean slang for disgusting men, which angered gamers to the point where they scoured the entirety of her social media profiles for more potential evidence of misandry, whether this was tweets, likes, accounts that she follows, or ones that follow her. When her employer addressed this, unlike Jaeyoung Kim, she wasn't fired, but she had to undergo what could generously be described as an inquisition, and had to agree to be interviewed by the company's CEO, Kim Hak-yu, where she was asked questions like why did you tweet the word hanam and why she liked certain posts. By the end of the interview, he concluded on her behalf that she didn't understand the difference between feminist groups such as Megalia and feminism in its original definition, and that she was mistaken in retweeting a tweet with the term hanam. In reference to the investigation into his employee, he described it as sa-sang-gum-jung, a method of verifying a person's beliefs and a term used during the Korean War to discern whether a citizen is a communist. It's an unsettlingly common practice for male gamers in South Korea to police and frequently comb through the backgrounds of women who work in the games industry and in other professions, including K-pop idols. They and their employers do so with the intention of ensuring they're capable of producing works that cater to men. And within the world of video gaming, if women in the industry fail the litmus test, male consumers will try and often succeed in getting them fired from positions that men deem valuable enough that they could push their own agenda, which they suspect is to diminish the worth of men in society, a sentiment which has been spreading rapidly among young South Korean men. Sexism towards women in South Korea expands far beyond the world of video games though. Within a very short space of time, the country went from being agriculture-based, but after pivoting to a focus on exporting domestically produced technologies, they experienced an explosion in economic growth, and to this day they allocate around 5% of their GDP on research and development. Thanks to their investments, South Korea has become home to some of the biggest and most popular technology companies in the world, including Samsung and LG, and car manufacturers like Hyundai and Kia. With economic growth came cultural changes and opportunities. Women were given more options for how they wished to live, and the long-standing expectation of them being wives and homemakers began to erode. This resulted in women being able to grow in education and work on building a career with less pressure on them to create a family early in life as possible, to the point where there's now less of a stigma towards women who choose to remain single. Despite being afforded more freedoms, South Korea's traditions and its treatment of women were which were heavily influenced by Japanese colonialism and the response to it, still put them in a place where they're often seen and treated like second-class citizens, where although they managed to establish a greater presence in work and schools, there are expectations for them to conform to certain gender roles. Women in South Korea might have gotten a foot in the door, but as soon as they walk in, the men in charge are quick to remind them of their gender. A young Korean woman who goes by the pseudonym Yuna shared her experiences in the workplace. On her first day of work as a bank clerk, she was surprised to have been given tasks by her boss that you wouldn't expect to find in the job description. She was first asked to make lunch for her entire team, and later in the day she was tasked to take home the hand towels from the men's bathroom and wash them in her free time. She refused at first and asked why the men who worked there couldn't clean the towels themselves, to which her boss replied, "How can you expect men to wash towels?" Believing that if she didn't comply, her job and potential career would be at risk, so she begrudgingly did as she was told. Obviously, this kind of treatment is demeaning. Yuna took this job with the expectation of doing what bank clerks do, but instead was given tasks where she was made to serve men to ensure that they could perform their jobs without having to look after themselves. What made matters worse, though, was that when she spoke to her female colleagues, she couldn't find the support that she was looking for. Instead, they told her, "It's like this everywhere, don't make a fuss." Up until last year, South Korea had one of the strictest parental leave policies in the world, which mandated 45 paid days off after childbirth, with a maximum of 90 days. Employers were, and still are, hesitant to hire women due to concerns about potential pregnancy-related absences, leaving women to choose between starting a family or pursuing a career. This policy exacerbated South Korea's already low birth rate, ranking among the worst in the world. And in 2020, the country reached the population death cross, where deaths surpassed births. In January 2023, the South Korean Labor Ministry tried to remedy this by introducing more generous parental leave benefits, by giving new parents 18 months of leave, the longest duration in the world. On paper, this sounds fantastic. Parental leave is extremely important for both parents and infants, since it allows them to develop a stronger bond, aids in a baby's brain development, minimizes the risk of postpartum depression and infant mortality. It also increases overall job satisfaction and productivity. However, while time will tell if this policy will be enough to help South Korea's diminishing birth rate, it might not be enough. For starters, even though the policy allows for 18 months of leave, only 12 of those are paid. So if a parent needs those additional 6 months, they'll have to survive on no monthly income. Secondly, the only people who can take advantage of this policy is heterosexual couples who are both in full-time employment and receiving dual incomes. So single parents, gay and lesbian couples are left to go without. Lastly, the problem runs much deeper than the amount of time off that a parent gets. The issue lies with the labor market as a whole. As I've mentioned already, women are not only less likely to be hired simply due to their ability to become pregnant, but they also get paid less than men as well. Women who are employed may find it even harder to grow their career, since employers could feel even less inclined to advance someone who already took a year or more off of work for personal reasons. And with such low wages, along with the high cost of childcare and living, many women in South Korea are not only seen as less in the eyes of men, but there's a culture of silence in which they feel as though that if they do speak out, they'll face further persecution and have any chances at personal development and growth taken away from them. Given the situation, some people might be tempted to say, at least they're getting paid for their work, or if they stick with it, they'll probably get a promotion in time. But it's not that simple. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, out of its 38 members, South Korea has the worst gender pay gap between men and women, with a massive 31.2% difference. As for chances at promotion for women in South Korea, those are incredibly low too. with 21% of managerial positions being held by women and only 5% in executive positions. Given the drastic inequality and employers' indifference towards change, legislators may need to intervene. However, this might be challenging, as South Korea's legislature is heavily male-dominated, with only 19% of seats being held by women. Female policymakers also tend to enter the field later in life, after fulfilling societal expectations such as having and raising children, which means they potentially lack the accumulated experience of their male counterparts, who in general begin their careers much earlier. In South Korea, women have begun to speak out more forcefully about their experiences of mistreatment at work and in society as a whole. Their discontent with discrimination based on gender has sparked a wave of protests and social movements, providing them with a collective platform to express how they desire and deserve equality. Despite the fact that the term feminism and its associated ideologies are still considered taboo in some groups, including ones that are largely female, a growing number of women are embracing feminist ideals. As the #MeToo movement began to make headway globally, South Korean women actively participated, making it one of the most impactful movements in Asia. Their efforts to denounce sexual misconduct yielded significant results. In 2020, the movement achieved a remarkable victory when Mayor Oh Kyo-don of Busan resigned amid sexual harassment allegations. In the following year, in 2021, after several women came forward with accounts of assault and injury, Oh was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Predictably, this movement has sparked intense resistance from men who argue that women either already enjoy equal status or are receiving preferential treatment solely based on their gender, thereby purportedly depriving men of opportunities. Despite South Korea's rapid economic advancement in recent decades, significant economic disparities persist, with job prospects for all genders being both scarce and low-paying. This scenario, compounded by women's social activism, has led many men to perceive that women are exploiting the spotlight to secure financial and societal advantages over them. In recent years, there has been a notable surge in anti-feminist attitudes, particularly among young men. This backlash against women who advocate against mistreatment has been marked by hostility. In reaction, those opposed to feminism have intensified efforts to stigmatize its advocates further. In South Korea, feminism is sometimes likened to a mental illness, and the pejorative term femi is employed to label individuals supposedly afflicted by it. Consequently, asking someone if they're a femi essentially amounts to inquiring whether they have a mental illness. In online platforms and social media, anti-feminist views have gained significant traction, particularly in spaces frequented by young Korean men, such as those dedicated to hobbies like gaming and music. Platforms like YouTube have emerged as hubs for content that criticizes feminists, often portraying men as the primary victims in a supposed gender war. As highlighted earlier, gaming communities are particularly notorious for fostering toxicity towards women, both within the industry and, of course, towards female gamers. This kind of reaction towards feminism isn't unique to South Korea. There are numerous places in the world where men have responded to feminist activism in near identical ways. But the fight against feminism in South Korea has yielded some profound results in the world of politics. In 2022, the leader of the People Power Party, Yoon Suk-yeol, narrowly defeated the leader of the ruling Liberal Party, Lee Jae-myung. Yoon campaigned on the back of a variety of hardline conservative ideals, but one of the major tenets of his platform was that he would fight against feminists and their supposed misandry. In an attempt to appeal to young male voters, he echoed their beliefs in claiming that feminist movements were responsible for the lack of job opportunities available for men, along with the economic hardships that they face. To accomplish his goals, Yoon said that if elected, He would abolish South Korea's Ministry of Equality and Gender, an organization which he believes exists to undermine men and their presence in society by working primarily to support the needs of women above all else. Although a lot of men in South Korea believe this to be true, the function of the ministry isn't what many think it is. According to the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family itself, its aim is to plan and coordinate women's policy and improve women's status through enhancements of women's rights, establish, conciliate, and support for the family policy and multicultural family policy, foster welfare and protect youths, and prevent violence against women, children, and youth, as well as victims. Since its inception, the ministry has played an important role in protecting and representing women in South Korea. They've aided victims of domestic and sexual violence, prevented human trafficking and protected its victims, helped women who have been discriminated in the workplace, and much more. Originally, the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family was known as the Presidential Commission on Women's Affairs, but after accusations were made of them taking sides and encouraging reverse discrimination, the name was changed. Although the ministry may go by a different moniker now, there's still a widespread belief that it exists solely for the sake of women and to stoke the flames of an ongoing gender war. Yoon may be adamant about dissolving the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, and there's a good chance that he might succeed, but he isn't the first to make these claims about the organization. There have been multiple attempts to dismantle the ministry throughout its existence, starting in 2006 after they established a policy to pay men to not hire sex workers for men's New Year's Day parties, and people tried to take them down again in 2018, 2013, and 2021. The Ministry of Gender Equality and Family clearly has a very important function, and it goes beyond simply helping women. Yet, despite their presence and the effects of women's rights movements in South Korea, it's evident that there's still a lot more work to be done. Men there may believe that power is being taken away from them, since many have now been held accountable for their actions against women, but that doesn't mean that the balance tipped anywhere close in favor of women, since at the end of the day, men are the ones who make the big decisions there, whether that's in the workplace, politics, or almost everywhere else for that matter. And even when it's not men in power making those decisions, the voices of men in South Korea's citizenry are heard far more clearly than anyone else's. Men are forgiven more easily, and they're held less accountable as a whole. This remains true within the world of K-pop as well, where women idols are held to a much higher standard than their male counterparts. A performer like Hee Chul can go on drunk rants in front of a live audience, make bizarre statements, and share his misogynistic remarks, but he can mostly get away with it by posting half-hearted apologies. On the other hand, when singer Jang Won-young of the band IVE innocuously ate a strawberry with 2 hands, she received a deluge of cruel mockery, and when members of the band Alice posted a video of themselves eating strawberries in reference to this, they in turn were criticized and accused of mocking Won-young. The singer Sully, formerly of the band FX, was one of the most vocal women in the world of K-pop. As a person who suffered from social phobia and panic attacks, she was outspoken about mental health awareness. In a country where there's still a massive stigma attached to it, she also frequently appeared braless in public, along with posting images of herself online without one, and despite being criticized heavily for this, she stood by her actions, saying that it's uncomfortable to wear one and that people shouldn't police how women want to dress. Sully endured endless amounts of harassment and bullying from her followers online, many of which looked for any opportunity to criticize her for who she is and what she said. The overwhelming distress inflicted by Sully's critics eventually took its toll on her though, and she tragically took her own life at the age of 25. Sully's legacy still endures to this very day though, and women have become more outspoken about the unreasonable and demanding beauty standards that they're expected to follow. South Korea has become famous for its beauty industry, to the point where it's now the third largest exporter of cosmetics in the world. As the world began to see more cultural exports from South Korea, such as their music and film, people got some idea of what their standards of beauty were. And after seeing female performers with gorgeous looks, flawless skin, silky, perfectly styled hair, and slim physiques, their image became something that millions of other people wanted to attain, both in and outside of South Korea. Looking like a K-pop star isn't easy though. Anyone that knows anything about makeup will tell you that even if you're genetically blessed, that will only get you so far when it comes to achieving certain beauty standards. And in South Korea, a lot of women find themselves very pressured to invest an obscene amount of time and money just to ensure that they're not criticized for their looks or not putting enough effort into their appearance. Whether this is through something like a rigorous daily 10-step skincare routine or more drastic measures such as plastic surgery, which as of 2021, South Korea has the highest number of cases per capita in the world. Unlike in many other parts of the world, there isn't much of a stigma towards plastic surgery in South Korea, and for the sake of clarity, I'm not saying that there should be a stigma, but the fact that it's so common speaks volumes about the lengths women are expected to go to in order to achieve beauty. There's also the growing popularity of people undergoing skin whitening treatments, since lighter skin is often seen as a sign of higher status. South Korea's plastic surgery industry is now so popular and affordable that people from around the world travel there to receive treatment from their surgeons, with a total of 211,218 tourists visiting the country in 2019 specifically for surgery. South Korea may provide numerous and high-quality options for how they can change their appearance, but the expectation for them to do so can be crushing, to the point where if they fail to meet the beauty standards set by society and indeed the beauty industry that fuels it, it can be a detriment to their lives. Like being criticized by loved ones, being ignored, ostracized, and even discriminated against, with 40% of women claiming that they lost out on job opportunities because they were judged on their appearance. And it's not uncommon for employers to go as far as requiring applicants to provide full body photographs of themselves, along with their measurements and weight. Those who have grappled with body image issues understand a certain paradox. While intellectually recognizing that societal pressures and media influences and beauty industry standards significantly contribute to body dissatisfaction, individuals often internalize negative self-perceptions. This tendency towards self-blame can arise when others in their lives fail to create a supportive environment that embraces and celebrates broader ranges of physical attributes bestowed by a person's genes. South Korean society teaches women to blame themselves for not looking perfect and meeting the standard set by its most conventionally beautiful members. And yes, this isn't unique to the country, it's a problem in most parts of the world. But when you can be rejected for an office job because your hips are too wide, or you can win 3 gold medals in the Olympics like professional archer An San, and still be criticized because your hair is too short for a woman, it puts women of South Korea in a soul-crushing, zero-sum game where they feel that they can never be enough. I've discussed subjects similar to this in the past before, and I've tried to make sense of why whenever women try to achieve equality in societies, it's met with oppositions by men who fear that they're going to take away all of their power, that they believe that the goal of women isn't to gain an equal footing, but to knock men off their pedestal entirely. The answer to this is complex and steeped in centuries of conflict between genders. But the simple answer is that those with a monopoly of power automatically assume that anyone beneath their station who asks for a greater share of power wishes to seize it all for themselves, and that even if they were to give an inch, they'd take a mile. I also try my best to be sympathetic towards men. After all, I am a man, and I would be lying if I said that there's never been a point in my life where I didn't understand or feel the sentiment. It's embarrassing to admit, but none of us have been perfect at every point in our lives. When you're a man and as you're being raised, you're told that if you do everything right, then the world will be your oyster as soon as you reach adulthood, only to find out that the job market is rigged and that even if you wear the right deodorant or the right clothes, women still won't throw themselves at you. It's easy to conclude that someone has cheated you out of what you were owed. When that happens, the powers that be put a lot of time and money into ensuring that you don't point the finger at them, and instead they manufacture an enemy that you're more familiar with, and maybe not on the best of terms with. In South Korea, the rise of feminist movements became a tool for politicians and corporations to garner favor with young men who felt alone and perhaps romantically unsuccessful. Men who didn't own a sports car by the age of 25, even though they were told it was a given. Men who saw other men that were perceptibly more successful than them at the same age, but they might not have noticed that they had a silver spoon dangling out of their mouths. These men are the ones who believe that they've been cheated out of a better life, and in that respect, they're right. But they've had their insecurities weaponized against them and been told that the reason why they sleep in bed at night with no one to reach out to is the same reason as why they're still buying suits off the rack for their 60 hours a week job while surviving off meals where the only prep is to add boiling water. The women of South Korea and elsewhere in the world where the fight for equality is ongoing simply want a place at the table. They don't want to be judged for their appearance. They want autonomy over their own bodies, proper compensation for their work, safety, and a voice that can be heard by as many people as possible without having to worry about it being muted due to their identity. All the same things that everyone else wants. They want to be seen while not being told how to present themselves to the world. The progress that feminists have made in South Korea just in the past few years has been remarkable, even in the face of strong opposition. That progress means something and deserves to be celebrated, regardless of how small or large those successes may be. And the fact that there are more women starting to feel comfortable about speaking out against discrimination is wonderful. Societies that refuse to protect its vulnerable members are deserving of criticism, regardless of where they are in the world and the composition of their population. I'd also be remiss if I didn't say that not every activist movement is perfect. Organizations like Magalia may have expressed a variety of bigoted views, which isn't acceptable, but those people don't represent women as a whole or their views. A few bad actors shouldn't be able to undermine the needs of a majority. Progress is slow, it's painful, and is often met with setbacks that sometimes feel insurmountable, but it still needs to continue. Those of us with the lion's share of power need to ask ourselves not what we stand to lose by giving up some power, but what we stand to gain by giving some to those who desperately need it. Thank you kindly for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to subscribe, and if you feel like it, maybe leave a like and a comment. It all helps. I'd like to thank Sumi for her help with the K-pop segment in this video. Her input was invaluable and I'm extremely grateful for it. Give her some support and subscribe to her channel, where she does a podcast about K-pop along with other insightful content. Sumi's a genuinely lovely person, so help her out. Thanks to all the patrons who support this channel, including a special shout out to the following who donate $5 or more: Femgirl Aaron, MD Bagel, Syndrome Noir, JP, Minty, Malcontent, Jacob Mayer, Zoe B, J Miz, Mech, Beige Circle, Jonathan Morris, Aria Rose, Bailey Grevling, Catherine Pandel, Candide, Dan McCrary, Remy Allen, Lizzie Peasy, Grant B, Enrique Gutierrez, Murgurger Fashionable, Alina, R. Atoms, Games, Cami, Sparrowwagon, El Salvador Dali, Tadeo Deoria, Ryan Osterman, Jay, Catherine, Dio, Carlin, Patrick McBain, Gina I, Gay Frogs Collective, Ruby O'Connor, David, Kingme, Fishcatch, Vertex, Emily Argentine, Lepaltism, Haplo, Tandy, BestFriendsGang.tv, Charlie, Locked In, Kevu, and Gert Weinreich. Thank you all again. Without your help, I absolutely couldn't make these videos. If you'd like to offer your support, you can do so at patreon.com/Salari. I've been streaming on YouTube every Tuesday at 2 PM Eastern, so come along if you want to have a chat or watch me bake. And if you'd like, you can join my Discord or follow me on Blue Sky. You can find links to everything in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and take care.